Welcome back to Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 5, Episode 1, Dos Cerrito, not Cerritos, it is singular, which I'm glad I caught, unlike the people who made the episode. The titles in the episode say Cerritos, but Memory Alpha and Paramount Plus say Cerrito, so I'm actually not sure who to believe here, but also Episode 2, Shades of Green. Yeah, how long has it been, actually? Like 2 series? Well, probably about a year. It's usually a year. We are back with Lower Decks, the final season of Lower Decks, if you don't know, which might be why they added multiple things to the battle sequence this season. Of course, we've got a lovely new thumbnail of me as Boimler, always drawn by my wife, link in the description to their artistry, it's called. They do commissions and stuff. Probably not the best to use Lower Decks as a showcase because they do it simpler, because it's actually animated. We do simpler art for Lower Decks. But I always like to mention that at the start. And then I cheated. I cheated, right? I've never had this much trouble finding a Nebula background for the thumbnails. So we've got the scene from the start of one of the season 4 episodes of Orion Pirates chasing Nick Locarno's ship, and then Badgie ascending when he's talking. There's like galaxies and stuff, and I put that. I cheated. I made a Nebula this season, but still off season 4 images. Yeah, Lower Decks. If you haven't been to a Lower Decks one, or maybe it's just been a while, is always a difficult one for me, because it's a fantastic series. It really is a great series. Other than maybe Prodigy, probably the series I'm like most consistently pleased with of the modern ones. But it's very good in generally ways that don't give me a lot to review and talk about. For example, these two are mostly little things, and then there's not much to say on the big things other than I like it. But remembering that Lower Decks is like this, I checked how long the old streams were, because I remembered some of them even being like 15 minutes or something, and they were all an hour. Except for that one where I forgot to hit go live. That one was 14 minutes, but I have no idea how long we'll go. I think it's a matter of if people are in the chat. But yeah, Dos Cerritos. What I'm going to do for the two-parters, not two-parters, the 2 episodes, is I'm going to mostly start and focus on episode 1. Then we'll do episode 2 later when we're done. Dos Cerritos was an interesting one. I think for me it started out... here, we can go over to here. I think Dos Cerritos started out, maybe the first like 10 minutes or so, is kind of like a kind of generic but then I actually really liked when they actually got into the character work and they had everyone interacting. Again, Lower Decks, well, I think these 2 episodes are just reaffirming, is it's not the best when it comes to its story plots. Like, they're generally serviceable. Sometimes they're really good, don't get me wrong, but often they're serviceable. They take some Star Trek trope, they tell a story within that trope, often spice it up a little bit. But because it's a comedy, there are like constant little like nitpicks or logical things where it's like, I don't know if this really still makes sense, or this is a bit weird. Like Rutherford just deciding to reprogram the mind of Rutherford in this episode. It was like some massive moral quandary, even though they are both Rutherford. That's just like, played for laughs a bit. But the character work, right? The character work has always been Lower Deck strength. And so that always kind of carries past some of the plot things. Like, if I were to just analyze this story as a story, it'd be meh for episode 1. But I really liked the structure of having the Mirror Universe as our season opener, especially accidentally, but for the final season or a later season. I would like to note, I do really enjoy, I'd never seen trailers or like read anything about this season, I know like nothing. Actually, I do know one legacy actor is coming back, but other than that, I know nothing. And so I was pleasantly surprised when they kind of twisted the arc to the Cerritos crew going to the other direct dimension as opposed to the other dimension coming here, which other than the mirror universe, I think is pretty rare. I'm not gonna say it's unique, but that was quite fun. It's a very minor thing, but it helped the episode feel fresh. But the reason I really like it is you really get a sense of how our characters have grown. Because as I said, character work is the strong point of Lower Decks. Everyone's really like been on journeys and grown. Like Rutherford, probably the least of our main cast. But even then, like his friendship with Tindy is a big developing part of his character. He did have a little arc, didn't he, last season, involving the Texas-class ships. But as I'm saying it, I realized Rutherford's arc wasn't really so much on how far he's come, but where he's going. Because that's the other side I really enjoyed is, all of our characters were recently promoted. And so we get like their current worries, their current fears, where they are in their arc, and we can see ways where they can... For some people, we see ways where they go about it wrong. We let everyone kind of internalize their struggles, even externalize their struggles, and we can really there's just a lot to chew on. A lot of it pointed out by the episode, but a lot of time you could spend just sitting here thinking about the episode. So of course you see Mariner struggling with how she'll be a captain, and then seeing like a horrible version of herself so she can correct. We literally get to see Rutherford's fears of not having Tindy, despite knowing full well that she's going to be back by episode 2. Brief aside, I did not know for a fact that Tindy was going to be back by episode 2, but I also know that for 4 seasons now, Lower Decks has completely changed their format in the finale, and then by episode 2, they've undone it. So, we all knew. I even mentioned that at the beginning of episode 4. But oh my gosh, what was my side? But then you get the other ones. I like peeking forward again that this seems to actually be a bit of setup, or an inciting incident for the season. We're sure it's not the focus. But Boimler very clearly next episode is, he's seen this perfect version of himself. He's seen the ideal him. And so he's trying to replicate what, I don't know, Beardler? We'll call him Beardler. He'll try to replicate what his bearded self is doing, but then not actually learning the lessons and not actually, he's imitating rather than understanding. And I think, I trust Lower Decks with its character work now. I think we'll get some really interesting stuff with this going forward. As a bit of a negative, though, I was a bit disappointed that, with the exception of T'Lyn, who had, 2 lines in this story, everyone really didn't get along with their doppelganger to, a comical extent. I'm realizing now that's probably an intentional meta joke, but I've talked about this with Doctor Who, that does a very similar thing. In Doctor Who, whenever they get the multiple doctors together, they're always, bickering and hate each other. In the kind of logic you always get with Doctor Who, behind the scenes, when people say why they did it, is well, if you met, a past or a future version of yourself, wouldn't you also hate them? And I'm no. On paper, I kind of understand the, with time travel, I can kind of understand seeing the things that you don't like about yourself. But, you're telling me there wasn't anyone on the entire crew who could, get along with themselves, especially when we've established they're so similar. It's just a personal pet peeve of mine that of the literally hundreds of people on the ship, no one could get along with themselves. Except T'Lyn, who just didn't have a chance to not get along with herself. Right? It just makes sense that some people would be fine. Like, you can have some friendly banter about their differences. Like, I love there's a bit here. God, King Billups had one of the best lines where he said, I guess math is 0.37% harder in your universe. After things went wrong. I love that line. I did not love the context of because, like, they hate each other. But God, I wish I could use that burn in real life, knowing full well that there will never be a time when that comes up. God, sometimes I have the next point, so I don't get this dead space. I have it in my head, and then while talking about the previous point, gone, totally gone, wipe that. We didn't need that point. But yeah, that was more of a minor pet peeve. I guess it was kind of integral to the plot, but weirdly the plot wasn't integral to the plot. Here's an example of what I was talking about earlier, though, where, like, Mariner literally whips her crew, which is done for, of course, the comedy. It's an over-exaggeration of how Mariner is, like, a super strict captain. Like, the Cerritos is mostly brigs. But, like, they're still in Starfleet. I try not to question too much the logic of a lot of these episodes because it's a mirror universe. It's a different universe, you know. Billups is a king in this one, yet in our universe, if Billups was a king, he couldn't be an engineer or something like that. That was a plot of an episode like a few years ago. But I'm like, well, clearly this universe is different. But like, it's similar to Captain Shaw. It's like, well, if you really think about it, are you telling me that Starfleet was okay with Mariner literally whipping her crew and they just, like, kept her around? No. And so that always does detract. This is why the first maybe, like, 10 minutes of the episode wasn't really doing it for me. But I really like the character work and the setup we got at the end here with the Cerritos plot. And before going on to the Tindy, I just want to say, as for the humor, yeah, I generally like it. Things like this whip, where you're prioritizing humor over the internal logic of the universe, very rarely work for me. But the humor, which I think is working for Lower Decks, wasn't so much in huge jokes. It's kind of like the Orville, where it started off really much as a comedy, and then they kind of toned down the jokes a bit, while still being a comedy. In season 1, I'm looking for a particular frame, sorry. In season 1, you would have scenes like, you know, the replicator that just banana, hot. You'd get more explicit, just like weird comedy stuff happening. I don't know if that's the best example I could have used, but now the comedy was a lot more smaller things, little visual jokes, just lines that make much more sense in context, but are still meta jokes. So Captain Mariner had like there are no interpersonal conflicts on my ship, which is exactly the thing she'd sort of say, but you can also clock, if you're a huge Star Trek fan, that was literally the, of course, one of Gene Roddenberry's rules, is no interpersonal conflicts on the ship. That is the exact phrasing of the rule. I'm looking for a frame here as an example of the slight visual jokes. Here we go. Welcome to Paramount, where these little preview images don't line up. There's the frame. There's like half a second where Tendi is looking at the lust idol, and you get the, you know, sleazy, horny collector guy. Instead of looking at Tendi, he just glances down to inspect their ass. Which I just found a funny little character joke in the 2 seconds. And that's really what the comedy was, is you got a little fun, random jokes. You know, the math being like 3% harder. And just the little build-up of it being like Beckett died, and that's like, she just went to Starbase 80, you know. The little jokes like with Evil Mariner, we'll call her, going to our original and being like, how do I look? And Beckett's just like, cute, and that's annoying. That's the sort of thing I want when you have the two duplicates interacting, is they don't just like totally hate each other. Like, sure, you can have some people like that. But it's like, Yeah, Mariner is also looking at how she dresses and being like, man, that is a cute look. I am glad I picked it. Um, it I want to get back. It kind of makes sense in Doctor Who, where you see the flaws in yourself. This is a totally different universe. It's like that. I've said this before. That other person just isn't me. Like, sure, it's someone I could have become had I made different choices, but I didn't make those choices. Therefore, I'm not that person. I understand that the philosophy isn't some, like, universal rule. That is the objectively correct way of looking at things. But it really bothers me that nobody in fiction ever seems to look at things that way. Except to Lynn, I guess, furthering the idea that Vulcans are the best accidental autistic representation. And I don't mean that in the way you probably think, but the fact that I don't mean that in the way you probably think is part of what makes them great autistic representation. Oh, one day I'll make like a 3-hour video on Vulcans and autism. I did like, and I actually noticed this for both episodes. I feel these opening seasons, let's get a slightly better frame, these opening episodes had a lot of great little reveals. Not some crazy pull the rug out from you. Maybe I'm just not paying too much attention. I'm engaged with the media, but I generally don't I just generally don't speculate too much about what's going to happen while I'm watching an episode, unless it is a mystery, like explicitly. And so just before, Tendi revealed herself, as she was talking here, I was like, hang on a minute, is that Tendi's voice actress? Is that Noelle Wells. There we go. Is that Noelle Wells? Because I thought they were using just a voice actor that they had on hand. And so it's always fun when you get those little reveals. Hello, Hello, Jack's Law. Welcome back. Welcome as well, David C. You were here earlier in the chat. I don't think I've seen some of you people in a while, so it's good to have familiar faces. What was I talking about with reveals? Next episode. I love the reveal at the end where it comes together that, Tendi's family has lost all of its money, and she goes back to the Cerritos, and it's like, hang on. I've literally just been watching an episode where the Cerritos is accumulating vast hordes of wealth it needs to get rid of. You've got a lot of lovely little bits that come together, and I'll think of more as we do our scene-by-scene analysis. But I'm really enjoying that. It's elevating the episodes a lot for me, because I've said before a lot in relation to Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise Season 3 is the best mystery box plot there is. Because of several reasons, mostly not relating to the mystery. But even its mystery, it does great, because in a perfect mystery story, you have sort of a line of how much the characters understand, right? And so the characters are somewhere on that line of, like, they understand, like, 10% of what's going on. The best mystery is when the audience is figuring stuff out either immediately before or immediately after the characters in the show figure it out, right? Like, I want to go like, oh my god, and then immediately the character in the show goes, oh my god, because they've realized the same thing as the clues are coming together. Or just, you're right there with the characters and you're going them along. And of course, this isn't a mystery, but I really got that sense of being right there with the characters. Like, wait a minute, we've got loads of wealth. Wait a minute, that's Tendi, Again, next episode, where it's like, hang on, this isn't a warship, it's a medical ship. I'm like, oh my gosh, they said it was from the time of the Great Plague. That was set up, and when I get that feeling, it really enhances the viewing experience, even not in a mystery. And I don't really feel like there was an episode where I had something else. I'm like, yeah, this is how it's gonna go. Well, other than Tendi coming back to the Cerritos, I literally told you how that was going to go a year ago. Or at the end of this episode, getting a little bit ahead of the Tindy plot, where they're like, the Orions have declared war. I was like, yeah, that's gonna be a nothing war that's over next episode. Well, I didn't think next episode. I thought it'd be maybe 2. But, that's a big structural problem Lower Decks has had. Although I'm really going to enjoy the Tindy cosplay I've got to do one year. That's the best part of this arc, is even though it's like predictable as hell, we're gonna get some great cosplays from like all the Orions out of it. Also, shoutouts to Strange New Worlds for pitching a war where I genuinely went, this is going to be a nothing war, and I know it. I'm still was much more interested in than Strange New Worlds. So there we go. We've got our dissing out of the way. Let's go into the Tendy plot. Is a bad thing to say before I get my drinks. Actually, Jack's Law. Back when I first started watching DS9, and we saw how much Quark's race loves wealth, I just assumed Latinum bars was what the replicators used to make everything. It would have made it all work. So Latinum, this is never actually said in the show, I believe. But the reason we use gold-pressed Latinum in the Star Trek universe is that the Latinum itself cannot be replicated for reasons that don't question it. I mean, it's really so, like, there can be money is why it can't be replicated. I don't think there's any real reason you couldn't do it. It's just, like, a simple molecule. But that's why it's gold pressed, is you can replicate gold. It's totally worthless. Yes, that brings up the question of the wealth in Tindy's house, but we'll get to that. Because there's the scene where, you know, Quark has, like, empty bars. He's like, oh, worthless gold. So you, like, mine or process the Latinum or however it works, and then you replicate a gold case, because gold is useless, and you just need something to hold it, and I guess, I don't know, it's not reactive. They use gold because it's shiny. That's the real answer, but that is why it's gold-pressed Latinum, and not, like, anything else in the universe. But yeah, actually, let's talk about that. So, at the end... Oh, that's next episode. You know what? I'll tease that. We'll talk about next episode, but I don't think it's totally broken that the Orions have, like, replicatable wealth. First off, Tendi, Noelle Wells, just everyone. I don't know who does the sister. Not Davina. Davina? Am I getting that right? Is it Davina? I don't remember, but the sister, I was really enjoying this Orion plot. They all did a great job. The acting. Tindy is always a joy. I enjoyed everything about Tindy. Just Mariner at the end are like, oh, you little ball of optimism. It's like, yeah, it's that. Her excitement at, you know, the idea of a baby is infectious. Even just little character work in the set pieces where, like, she's this whole pirate life. She's got this fantastic outfit that I'm jealous of, just like her sister. But, you know, still our little Cerritos models. In fact, I think that's the one. Wasn't that the one Tindy and Rutherford were making in season 4, and then Rutherford gave to Tindy? That would be very fun if it was. I didn't rewatch the last season before this. But I actually did really enjoy this little offshoot we got into the Orion life. If I have a criticism, which I do, one criticism about it is when Lower Decks does the Orions, let's take a step back because there's context to the criticism. What Lower Decks has done with Tindy historically, it's not been explicit very often, and in fact, it's not really come up a crazy amount, but it's definitely a big part of the character, is working against the stereotype of the Orion pirate, you know? We've had Tindy often fill the role of a minority group, a disenfranchised group. You know, she's had a bit of an arc of fighting against societal expectations, the Deep Space Nine episode being, like, the key example. And I've really liked the work they've done to make Orion feel much more like a living place that's not just a bunch of pirates. And it's been great, good work that has real world, you know, applications and can really make you think. But when we go to Orion, I feel like they're leaning into those same stereotypes where they're going, oh, Orion's pirates. Even when I was getting this thumbnail, as I mentioned, this is a scene where the Orion pirates are chasing Nick Locarno. They're also very stereotypical, like, they're pirates, we love murder, pillage. They're just talking about installing, like, the weird neck metal to look awesome. Even here, this scene, when Tindy is walking into a room, they're singing a song that goes something like, we are Orions, we like death, stab, 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 mutilate, mutilate. And let remind you, these are people who we later learn don't actually want to be pirates. I feel like we are kind of fighting against a lot of the progress we made with Tindy. We're fighting against that representation. You could argue that the Orion pirate stereotype exists and has to come from somewhere. It's not totally unfounded. There must be stereotypical Orion pirates or something close to that for the rest of the universe to view Orions like this. But it was just crossing a line, especially being played for laughs. That's my criticism. Everything else was brilliant. Jack's Law, the people who work on this show do stuff all the time that show much they like doing it. Oh, they do. I think the whole cast loves it and they want to do more. I want them to do more until that battle sequence is just everything. I hope in the final episode of Lower Decks, you know, the intro battle with the Borg and stuff is just everyone. Just everyone is there. Sometimes I wonder what the plan is. If they want to do 20 seasons, what would they do? And I'm like, the plan is probably, don't worry about it. Even if we get 50 seasons, we're still going to find ways to add things to that scene. It's going to need to come with, like, a seizure warning. Yeah, but I don't know how much there is to talk about this specific intro. I did kind of guess the joke of, like, yeah, Tindy's the badass pirate, but she's still, like, not gonna murder anyone. I'm not the biggest fan of how her crew behaves, knowing what we learn. That they don't really want to be pirates, they don't want to, like, mutilate people. Like, this one literally... Well, okay, I was gonna say this one literally wants to teach ethics. We don't really know what those ethics are. But, like, one of them is very interested in ethics, and yet they're still willing to do this. It's going back to what I was saying about the, you know, they're defaulting back on that stereotype, I guess. But let's see. I really like what they are doing well with humanizing the Orions is really just seeing these two, like, badass Orion pirates, which is absolutely what Tindy is in this situation. But they also have plenty of scenes of just, like, being sisters. They remind me a lot of my wife and sister-in-law, who they're just very clearly just sisters who are very close and love each other. And you get scenes like this one here, where it's just, like, a normal video call. Like, that monitor is basically a brown rounded version of the one in front of me right now. If I had a webcam, it would look a lot like that. I mean, my throne is bigger than Davina's, but messed up the joke not remembering her name. But oh my gosh, I've just realized those are little speakers down there. I was wondering what those, I thought they were desktop ornaments. But no, it's next episode when we get the scene with the sleepover. I just very much enjoyed seeing Tindy with her family, and it's a great way to help these worlds feel more like actual worlds. Lower Decks has really turned Orion from that sort of generic sci-fi thing of, like, we are pirate race, this is what our whole society does, to something that, yes, they are still, their economy is basically piracy, like, as far as we can tell. But, like, yeah, it's actually a race. Things happen. It's actually a planet. Day-to-day stuff goes on. And so just generally, I did really enjoy it. Oh, and I've gotten, let's see, half an hour into the review. Where are my boys? And I didn't even mention the animated series Orions that are clearly hiding. Oh my gosh, can you give me a frame of TAS Orions, which is something that I totally forgot existed. I dig it. I'm down for it. I mean, the animated series established the Orions. Well, if you don't know, this is basically what the Orions look like in the animated series. Imagine that, but it was drawn in the 1970s. That was an animated series Orion. I really love it. Because before, when watching the animated series, it just kind of something I have to hand wave away, like, they drew them blue, but they're green. It's like that green Andorian in, God, what's it called? Next Generation. Yeah, whoops, didn't forget the name of that one. Like, I also don't think it's weird that we haven't seen them before. Okay, it's a little weird. But unlike the Klingons, the Orions barely have any content. They're in, like, an original... There's, like, 2 Orions in TOS, and one who looks like an Andorian. And then there's, like, a small handful in Enterprise. So this is actually a case of, like, going into the franchise's lore that's working for me. Similar to how we should see the Remans every now and then. We should see some of the animated Orions. It was just fun to see them in their... Look at me, I'm from a 1970s animated cartoon. Just look at that suit. It's straight out of, like, a 70s comic or something, too. It's just... Yeah. Going on, though, I really don't think there's too much. I did like those moments. I really just... It was enjoying seeing Tindy being Tindy, which is always a joy. It's really disappointing doing the thumbnails for these. When I'm like, I want to do Tindy, but we did Tindy last season. But yeah, it was really not too much to talk about on Tindy's plot line in this episode. Just double checking. I think I'm going to move on to episode 2. That's it. Got all the Orions. Can we go to a Star Trek con and everyone agrees to just dress like Orions? I've also just realized that the entire Orion crew is female. And I can't think if there's a reason for that. There are definitely male pirates. I don't think they're matriarchal. Orion's a weird one, isn't it? Like, it's patriarchal, but it's also a patriarchy where the women are slaves, but supposedly the women are also in charge of everything, although they still keep themselves as sex slaves because they choose to. It's a weird one. I think we should probably just ignore that. But that is interesting. It's probably just a fight against the old Orion sex slave. Oh yeah, there's another little one that got me. Hang on, that one looks like my wife's haircut. I'd rather die than go back to the dungeon where I grew up. Yeah, look, Lower Decks, you do remember the whole anti-Orion stereotype stuff you were doing. But no, Orions grow up in literal dungeons. But yeah, I think I'm gonna move on to season 2. I'll get through the comments. If there's anything else on season 1, now's a great time to do it. Not season 1, episode 1. Jack's Law, again, that would be so cool if Quark's people were industrial to the core. Till the replicator was introduced, and that was when they turned to their Bible. I think Ferengi capitalism is pretty old and well established. Like Quark mentions when the rules of acquisition were written ages ago, and the first Grand Nagus, I think, is like centuries ago at least. They were, of course, not always capitalist. I mean, at some point they were like, probably frogs that evolved. But, yeah. I don't know. Ferengi's also a planet that's in a weird place. Lower Decks has done a lot of good stuff with development of some of the old planets, although I would hesitate to call Ferenginar a neglected planet. Here we go. It's like what I was saying before. I just really love these scenes of Tindy and, oh my gosh, it's not Divana. Star Trek Tendi sister. The Erica! That's right. Duh, Erica. I think I would always forget her name last season as well. Like, sure, it doesn't totally wipe away the stereotyping they're doing, but scenes like this, where you just see, like, there's no humans in the scene, it's just Orions on Orion doing Orion things. But I think it's also tapping into something I like, of essentially people are people, like, but to the extent of also including all the aliens, where, yeah, in the end, we're all, like, the same. Sure, we haven't met aliens, but the sort of drives that humans have, the desires and things that, like, as individuals we want, there's no real reason that specifically would be human. And, like, our need for connection, our desire for cooperation, ultimately just, like, a quiet, peaceful life, is driven by evolutionary factors that also would affect aliens that, like, evolve. And so really our differences would just be cultural. And so, yeah, you'd have, like, alien sisters who love each other just having sleepovers, except they're also planning a battle because they live in a society of pirates and are in a war, where this is just a casual thing. Jack Slaw. I'm looking at where I caught up in the comments. Yeah. And I actually guessed pretty early on that she might be pregnant. I don't know why. That was the one I went over some sort of, like, heart issue. But I mean, you'll find out pretty early in the show, so it's not a big deal. I think let's start with the Tindy plotline first. Not too much to say about it. I mean, Tindy is adorable. Like, watching somebody be nervous about a pregnancy isn't the most entertaining thing to me. Oh my gosh, you can't see the screen. Whoops-a-doodle. Yeah, watching someone be nervous about a pregnancy isn't just the most engaging thing. I've seen it a lot in plots. It's usually, admittedly, not here, but usually done in kind of stereotypical, very gendered way of, like, a husband worrying about their wife, and then the wife being like, oh, I'm pregnant, not infirm, and yada yada, all that. It's really a lot of negative connotations just reminding me of that. But I feel it did go a little bit too long. I feel like Erica should probably realize, look, they're doing all the pregnancy things. I'm pregnant. Maybe, just maybe, my doctor sister might have realized from those heart issues, which I assume is some sort of Orion morning sickness equivalent, that I might be pregnant. You know, I feel like Erica maybe should have clocked on to that one. But regardless, I still feel, I don't know, there's just something to watching a totally non-human plotline that I'm liking. I can't really think you get that often. Even Deep Space Nine, like, of course, we'd have a lot of focus on Bajor and Cardassia, but how many plot lines truly are there that have literally nothing to do with humanity? And bonus points to this episode for not even involving the Federation in any way, shape, or form. Like, there's that episode where Kira, like, her terrorist buddies are all being killed one by one, and she has to, like, she goes and tracks down the Cardassian doing it, despite being pregnant. But even then, like, the Federation's helping her. You have Jadzia, well, I'm saying human. You have Cisco is still there. She's carrying a human baby. Like, humanity is still involved, even, like, just a little bit in those stories. Are you calling Tendi a bad doctor? I'm not calling Tendi a bad doctor. I mean, that'd be like saying if a doctor saw a human female nauseous, they'd go, must be pregnant. I'm saying that Erica, seeing her sister do all, like, freaking out about her safety to an absurd extent, and doing all the sort of things that, you know, you should do, like, to a pregnant person, or should be doing, like, things that are good for baby when pregnant, those sort of things. Knowing that your sister is also a doctor, and you found her suspiciously in your room where your logs are with all of the lights off, that perhaps maybe she might suspect that you are pregnant, you know? That I'm saying that, if anything, Erica's a bad investigator? I don't know. No, it would have been ridiculous for Tendi to just assume. I mean, Tendi could think, maybe pregnant, but yeah, like, nausea does not mean you're pregnant. It's that level of thing. Just on the yeah, like warm fuzzy socks, which I bet Tindy knitted herself. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. My favorite thing of this episode. This little guy up here. I don't care if Moopsy was popular, and so they made a little another weird thing that just goes like, ah! It's, what even is the sound? I love that guy. I want 7 of them to live in my house. And I love that they reused it. They didn't overuse it, but I really hope when we go to Orion more, we get this creature that just screams. Like, in the establishing shot, they have immediately after that scene, instead of bird noises, they have that. Brilliant 10 out of 10. This is the comedy I want for my Star Trek. I want a drama between 2 sisters, but also screaming pterodactyl creatures. 10 out of 10 IGN. That's great. Hang on, I've just realized. Did they subvert it by having a Orion queen? I don't remember what they called her. Surrounded by male sex slaves? If so, well done. There you go. You're working against the stereotype. I do wish you still hadn't gendered the roles so neatly. But hey, you're still working against the stereotype. To Erica. I like this Solar Sailor design. It reminds me a lot of the Bajoran Solar Sailor. I don't know if it's an exact replica. I don't think it is, but it's definitely inspired. But what I really appreciated is on the exterior shots of the solar sails that Fanhome is somehow going to have to figure out how to build a model of. Oh, come on. Lower decks, give me a frame. The sails have a shimmering effect. So it's always been a problem for me when you get solar sails in Star Trek. Sci-fi in general, but Star Trek is notable here. They're like absurd. They don't make sense. So solar sails are, of course, a real phenomenon, but it's a pitiful, there we go. It's an absolutely pitiful thrust. Like, you'll get there. You're not going to slow down at the end. Star Trek's always ignored that. But, like, you see them unfurl the sails and just go. In this and Deep Space Nine, like, look at that. They're just going instantly. And they even look like they're in deep space here. The sun is not behind them. Deep Space Nine was fine because it was like, oh, weird tachyon solar rays. So I get how they did warp. But still, their sublight stuff, it just doesn't make sense. But the sails here have a shimmering effect. It might just be how they chose to style it. But what I read it as is essentially code for, like, tech magic. You know, these sails read as something technological. So less that it's working like, you know, a boat sail. Solar rays are hitting the sail and that's pushing it forward. But solar rays are hitting the sails, which are absorbing the energy and somehow converting that into thrust, is how I'm reading it. And so I don't know if it's intentional. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I really like that, oh, hey, it's a solar sail race that actually makes sense. Oh, Strange New Worlds, that's the other one that did solar sails badly by the same reasoning. not too much here. I did love Tendy's moment of like, also, I'm the goddamn, like, Winter Soldier. I didn't mean to say Winter Soldier. What was it? Queen of the Winter. Also, I'm the goddamn Queen of the Winter Star, and you will obey me. It's like, it's just, I loved seeing her going through the logic of like, I don't want to do this. I know you're not really getting it. Like, God, how do I convince him? Hang on a minute. I'm the goddamn daughter of the Winter Star. Like, beautiful. Just Tindy. Noelle Wells was killing it. Tindy is always a joy. Best character. Tindy is like my wife's favorite character, and they haven't even seen the episode yet. They just received the thumbnail instructions. Remember all the talk about how 0G we could make the thrust for a fixed point of the ship? It's like 10 years ago. No, what are we talking about? How in 0G you could make the thrust for a fixed point on the ship. I don't know what you're talking about. I have just realized, though, that the solar sails have gravity plates, which does imply some level of technology, although I guess the gravity plates are usually passive, right? They don't need active power. I think they're trying to make fun of that. I don't remember. It might have been a joke, I forgot. As I said, most of the humor was little things. God, like her cutiny. God, I love Tindy. Why can't I want to be Tindy now? And in Doctor Who, I want to be Ruby Sunday, and here I want to be Tindy. I do want to say, though, now I understand that pirate battles are probably bad for babies. I do want to point out that these are aliens, and so, like, it seems like, you know, high physical exertion in extremely dangerous scenarios are the norm for pregnancy, and so maybe Tindy shouldn't be worrying that much. But I do find it odd how they didn't point out that this level of stress is also probably bad for the baby if you want to get into that sort of obsessive, you know, don't do anything that could possibly be remotely bad for the baby. I was like, well, maybe try and make that... Like, the joke writes itself. You have her, like, screaming there, throwing a fit, but then Tindy is trying to, like, sing a lullaby or something. I don't know. I was like, come on, Tindy. You're being obsessive wrong. Oh, God, those little garden robots. We'll get to them, but we are on the Tindy plot line right now, which I actually do appreciate. Sure, it only lasts 2 episodes, but unlike... I could be wrong with my memory here, but unlike what they did with Boimler on the Titan or some of the other stuff, I feel like this one actually got more attention and focus. I think... I don't know if it's fair to say it was the A plot for both episodes, but I think the Tindy plot line at least got an equal level of focus to the alternate universe plot line in episode 1. And I don't think that was the case with Boimler on the Titan. I think Boimler on the Titan got half of 1 episode, and it got, like, the closing scene in episode 1 of that season. But this actually got full focus for both episodes. I like how it was dropped at once as well, so we could wrap up this arc. Like, accepting that it's going to be 2 episodes. I appreciate that we kind of just did it, got it out of the way, and now we're back to normal. Accepting that that's the way it was going to go. Also, whoever drew that hand did a bad job. What is that tiny hand? Any more Tindy plot? I think we're pretty much done. Yeah, I like the ending. I like the Tendy solution. I was thinking, again, with being right before the characters in the show, with reveals. Oh, there's a money shot for you. I was thinking you could maybe separate the artifact. Because I was also thinking, like, Tindy as a character wouldn't want to steal the wealth of this family. They wouldn't want to ruin the Blue Orions. Which, thinking about it, sounds kind of racist to refer to them that way. But maybe that's just what they are. So the Blue Orions, like, they'd be penniless. It seems like a big deal. We learn later they're not a big house anyway, which also helps explain why you don't see them. But I was like, maybe Tindy could separate it, like take the crystal out of the casing. And I was like, I don't know. It's kind of one part. Like, you can't really separate. And then she blows it up. So, brilliant. I was like, yeah, well done, Tindy. And it makes sense. I kind of appreciate the subversion of like, yeah, no, like, I you don't the plan doesn't always work. I like that. And again, it's kind of in character. It's fitting. Um, Even though the Tindy house is, I think, like one of the largest houses on Orion, um, it works. You kind of get like just some sort of grandparent upset about their beckoning children. You know, I kind of get the feel of like Genghis Khan or someone who had like hundreds of kids, just like, you know, kid number 47 and 76 are fighting, and you've got to take 5 minutes out of your day just to deal with it. I already talked before about how I love how the plot lines came together and we got the good ending. We enslaved the Blue Orions. Let's not worry about that. But no, I did. I loved how they came together. And in terms of replicating stuff, right? Because this is all stuff you presumably could replicate. Thinking about it, though, the Federation was going to just put it back in the energy replicator. And that planet is probably experiencing a high energy demand because, you know, everyone's replicating because it's the hip new thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I just got my new 3D printer. I have a package of many rolls of filament arriving. But, yeah, so why didn't that planet just reclimate it for the energy? We're going to ignore that and just say, just make, like, replicating wealth illegal. Like, I can understand it being such a big, piracy being such a big part of Orion culture that's how they do it. Or it's even not really the wealth that's important, it's the obtaining of the wealth. And quite frankly, how badass would it be for everyone else in Orion from their perspective? They, like, the Tendi house fell. It had all its wealth stolen. Like, then within a day, they had it all back. You can say you took it from the Federation. That's true. You don't have to mention how. You can just presume it was piracy. And yeah, that's gonna look badass as hell. Jack's Law, I've seen a few comments coming in. Oh, it's how rotation creates stabilization. Yeah. You can make gravity in 0G by accelerating or spinning, but that's not the direction the gravity was going in their ships. Nice job on the artwork. I assume you mean the thumbnail. If it's my thumbnail artwork, that's from my wife. Artistry link in the description. They often go by Hessenite. They have, like, Dragon Bun Studios is a link now. If you're talking about that Orion's hand, that was not my wife's work. Although, actually, you know what? I take it back on whoever draw those hands. Because Erica just has really tiny hands compared to her body. These sleeves don't help do it, but actually, it wasn't a slight on that artist. It was a slight on whoever approved this design. That's just me? Well, I mean, my fist isn't that much bigger from, like, my chin to my nose, and Erica's, you can't. Okay, there's my thumb. Her hands are still a little tiny. Like, look at Freeman here. Tindy, I see you hiding your little Orion hands. But yeah, that's the Tindy plot. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I love just watching my characters be characters. I've really enjoyed Erica this season. I love Tindy. I want a show that just it's Tindy and Erica. That's the show. Extend this out into like a 20-season show. Just Tindy's time on Orion. As for the A plot, I enjoyed. I mean, you know, it wasn't really the focus, but I enjoyed the setting of a society transitioning into post-scarcity, because it's really something we don't see, and for that matter, post-scarcity isn't really something we ever address. Like, I'm not even sure if the classic era ever really called it post-scarcity or even addressed that that's what the Federation had. I think it's been thrown around in the modern era a few times. But yeah, I mean, it was done well for how little it was the focus. I get, oh my gosh, I love, sorry, the bank sign, and you can see the Museum of Friendship going up. Just the ATM spitting out money. It feels like a society that was like ours, very capitalist, and then suddenly money doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you'd go out in the streets and burn money. You'd throw it everywhere. You'd get the ATV out. Someone was like, hey, I need to borrow your vehicle. I also was just thinking about my car. I'm like, yeah, sure. Mind if I take something out of the glove box and then you go for it? I'll just get a new one. It's free. So I just really enjoyed it. But all throughout, this is what I was saying, Lower Decks did good with just the little bits of comedy in their setting, or even just providing a scenario that makes sense in universe, but is unique. There's sort of comedy in the scenario of, hey, we're a post-scarcity society, but literally last week we weren't. And so now we've got, like, our entire world is totally unsuited for the new lifestyle we have. But instead of society collapsing, the new lifestyle is we have everything, so it doesn't really matter. There's, like, the guy who replicated, like, 6 burgers, just presumably to do it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Jack Slaw, they only see value in one piece of tech. Yes, but it is the piece of tech that can get them practically anything in the universe. Like, anything they could feasibly need, it could just give it to them for free and instantly. I would also put a lot of value in that piece of technology. How far the microwave has come. So my house is older, right? The people who owned it previously had had it for a while. And they had a lot of old books, right? Some old books. We have a cookbook that is a microwave cookbook from ye olden days. I'm not going to throw out dates, but it's very clearly the microwave was recently invented. Here's some cool stuff you could do with it. And it's very funny, and we love our microwave cookbook, because it's basically like, you could have a TV dinner. You could throw a fish in there, you know? It's like, hey, did you know you can use your microwave? And it's brilliant, and we love it. And it's we're never going to get rid of that book. But yeah, oh my gosh, there was a C plot in this episode even. Man, we're really getting far. Not much to say on the Rutherford plot. I will just briefly talk about it here. I really like Talin in this episode. She's really getting a lot of characterization. I think it's actually the last one. She smiled when she did her joke of saying, like, remarkable, by the way, which was a great joke. She smiled the exact correct amount of Vulcan like Talin should smile. In fact, I've still got that episode open. I want to see if I can find the frame, because it's like, you know, if it was anyone else, you wouldn't even notice it was a smile. But you're actively looking for the smile. And it's like the tiniest... Oh, wait, hang on. I'm sorry, I can't just let them play when they're new. Here we go. I will let this play. There we go. There's like 2-degree change in there. Absolutely brilliant. And it's, you know, we've done it before, so I'm glad it's not getting, like, all the focus. But I like seeing Talin kind of explore the more emotional side of herself and becoming more of like a late discovery era Vulcan. There's a 32nd century Vulcan. Whoever's doing the Vulcan work on Lower Decks is clearly a writer who gets Vulcans. Is evidenced by the fact that I think Talin hasn't said logic or logical once this season, which is always my barometer. There's an inverse correlation between the amount of times a Vulcan says logic and how well the writer understands the Vulcan. You ever see a VCR? Yes, my mother had a lot of that old tech for a while. I would watch a lot of Disney movies on VHS because we still had one. And And yeah, my mom had a flip phone, like, well after that was a thing. Yeah, but yeah, no, we had a. I think I saw VHS last year when my mom moved to Florida and they were getting rid of their stuff. I think they took the VHS and the VCR. Anything else in the Tindy plot? I already talked. I mean, it was basically an extended sequence of, worry because they're pregnant jokes. Oh man, look, this is how much of a tangent we got on. I forgot, I'm not on the Tindy plot. I'm on this plot. Yeah, not too much. I did like the little jokes about them sharing a comm badge. Like, it was just a fun, love that you're sharing a comm badge. But then the second time, just exactly how to react. Like, and, Boimler, do you have a comm badge? You need me to send you one? What Lower Decks is really doing good now is, they're not like banana hot jokes, which was a great joke, don't get me wrong. They're like really just jokes that are making Starfleet feel like a real world. It's like, hey, you need me to like send you one of those? It's just like a manager who's seen their employee being a little weird and thinks they might be lacking a tool. But whoops. Okay, we're good. I hit a button on my mouse. Yeah, and just I like seeing the responsibility. That alternate universe episode really helped us examine how much our characters have grown and really reflected on that. Because now I can see them, like, first off, Mariner just trying to call this in. Good Lord, season 1 Mariner would not have done that. But, hey, we got the reference to literally the first episode when Boimler was screaming about his bones. Mariner being, in fact, even just Boimler being the one to be like, yeah, take an hour off. But then instantly when things actually got serious and their crew was arrested, it's like, no, call it in, no one objects. But the narrative still gives a way for that story to happen. They don't just send the Cerritos in. It's very well done. I think Lower Decks, I mean, it found its groove like at least 2 seasons ago, but I don't know how much more I'm going to have to say, though. Again, it's really just a lot of little comedy. Like, hey, can I borrow your car? Yeah, I'll just replicate a new one. But even the little bits, you had clever solutions to, obviously breaking a plot, because they're cleaning robots. Also, hilarious that they are literally just cleaning robots with guns tied around them, totally uselessly. This is how you comedy, because it also makes sense in universe. I want jokes, but not at the expense. Because the rich elite, obviously a lot of them wouldn't like what's happening to society, but like they can't solve that problem. It's inevitable. They can't hire like muscle and security because it doesn't matter how much you pay that security. They now live in a post-scarcity society where money's useless. So the rich have done the only thing available, which is absolutely not effective, but they're still so stuck in their ways and terrified that they can't move on, or they do it out of desperation. Yes, this is just explain the jokes, the review, but no, this is brilliant. I love these garden robots, just the arcs they got on. They had a bunch of fun little jokes, like, oh my gosh, I forgot to water them. They're just, I think it's this scene. I will never choose the path of violence again. Just the idea that the rich tried to reprogram the security bots and like they're having a crisis of faith. Brilliant. This is what I want. I want strong character work, fun settings, or like, a bit of a twist on the trope, and then just little comedy like that. Lower Decks is really kind of hitting a good, not, it's not really laugh out loud. It's not comedy first, but it's still a comedy. And I just want comedy, not at the expense of the internal logic, and a comedy where comedy is not above all else, which I think Lower Decks is really hitting. I mean, we had the sweet moment with Tindy and her sister. it's kind of predictable in that, actually I was doing this for you, but the manner in which the sister was helping Tindy wasn't obvious. I like that it wasn't a misunderstanding. They was very explicit. I am pregnant, and now I have to hide that fact. It wasn't one of those comical, obvious misunderstanding stories. But yeah, and again, little jokes. I loved at the end. I saw the frame somewhere where Talin was just Talin of all people was just absolutely destroying the shuttle, and Badgie's here for some reason. Don't worry about it. That's just a little level of comedy. And oh my god, did they add Talin? That's adorable. God, I love this shuttle. Yeah, I don't think I have too much else to say. I think I might be wrapping up. Good to have Tindy back. I'm sure it was in the trailers that Tindy was in a Starfleet uniform. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else left. So unless anyone else has got anything, I think I'm going to wrap everything up. My 3D filament, I don't think has arrived yet, which is unfortunate. I had a whole joke prepared, how like the doorbell would ring and the dogs would bark. And I was going to go like, oh, don't worry, I have a package being delivered. It's not a drug bust. The police haven't found out about the weed room yet. And then I was just going to move on. It was going to be funny. But no, I didn't get to do it. I'm gonna hit end stream, and then they're going to come right away. But yeah, we will continue Lower Decks. I don't believe there's a week I have to miss. Of course, something might come up. We do have Christmas, going through December. It's December 21st. It is the Saturday before Christmas, will be the last Lower Decks, potentially the last ever. And then I think I have the next week off for Christmas stuff, and then TOS. Oh, and of course, I meant to do this earlier. If you haven't heard any of the announcements, if you just come for the reviews, I will be getting back into the Starships reviews soonish. My wife and I still want to do another one of those for the Discovery Klingon ships. They don't know it's for the Discovery Klingon ships. But the Fan Home company has picked up the die-cast model Starship line from Eaglemoss. It's still got Ben Robinson running it. I have a video about it. If you go look, it's one of my recent ones, because I don't have a lot of videos. But it is essentially Eaglemoss in every way except the name. But it sounds like they will start shipping in November. With Eaglemoss as an American, I used to be like a month late. There was a big delay. I don't remember how long. Hopefully that is not the case for Fan Home. They also have the UK and US licenses. But I'll do those every month, and then maybe some extra things. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I will say thank you all. Oh, and that starts like a little bit after I get my first ship. You can watch the community tab for that and get updates. So I will say thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you